You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you might not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Welcome back to Dating Intentionally. I'm Talia. I'm sharing no-nonsense advice for navigating dating and relationships with confidence and ease, whether you've been dating for a while or you're just starting out. I believe dating can be fun, and I'm here to help you enjoy the process. Question for you. Have you ever crossed off someone on your list after like a lukewarm date, only to think that maybe you should have given them a second shot? Or maybe you've made a mental checklist of exactly what you're looking for in a partner, only to fall hard for someone who checks almost none of those boxes. I have been there, and you are not alone. We're getting deep into the science of how we choose people to date and partner up with in this episode because today I'm talking with Paul Eastwick. He's a relationship scientist and a professor of psychology at UC Davis, where he also serves as the director of the Attraction and Relationships Research Lab. His book, Bonded by Evolution: The New Science of Love and Connection, came out earlier this year, and it was such a good read. Paul has spent decades researching why we're actually drawn to the people we're drawn to and why what we say, what we want on paper, so rarely matches up who we end up choosing. It's fascinating. In this episode, we get into why your list might be doing more harm than good, the real research behind mate value and being in or out of someone's league, and why first impressions are less stable and less predictive than you think. Paul also breaks down why the slow burn is actually the norm, not the exception, and what the science says about building compatibility with someone versus just finding it. At the end, we answer a dating dilemma from a non-binary listener who fell hard for an old friend. As always, I love hearing from you. So if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns, slide into my DMs on Instagram at dating.intentionally. You can email me at talia@datingintentionallypod.com. Yeah, and you know I love your comments on Spotify as well, so drop your thoughts in the comments. I just love hearing from you. So thank you to everyone who sends me messages and just, makes me feel like I'm not speaking into a void. So thank you. All right, let's get to it. Welcome, Paul, to Dating Intentionally. I am so excited to have you here. You've been coming up in my research a lot for this podcast. I'm like, you know what? I just gotta get Paul on. We have to chat.
All right. Well, I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah. So can you give us a little snapshot of your origin story? What led you to doing research on relationships?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by the topic. I'm always a little bit like, who isn't fascinated by the topic? But I remember discovering that attraction and relationships could be the subject of scientific study. But it's sort of a sad opening story because the way I discovered it was through this infamous Time magazine article in 1994 that was an excerpt from Robert Wright's book, The Moral Animal. And at that time, it was about all of this evolutionary psychology that was taking place in the academy, and they were discovering all these new things about gender differences and the way that relationships work. And it was all so bleak. And it was just a story about how men and women are not going to get along. The origins of heteropessimism were right there. And I remember thinking, this is so cool that we can, reach back in time to gain insights about these challenges that people have faced for a long time. And at the same time, like, oh my God, this is absolutely awful. And at the time, I've just been dumped. And so all of this hits very hard. And I think, well, I want to study this no matter what. I wonder if the message is as bleak as what's coming out of evolutionary psychology, but I wanted to find out. And that's sort of how I got my start.
Okay, wow. So wait, for people who aren't necessarily familiar with what the evolutionary psychology is, how has that showed up in our zeitgeist? What are some examples?
Yeah, I think it appears in a number of different ways. in the sense that there was a science in the 90s that was taking off, and some of these ideas really escaped containment, and you've encountered them. So one idea is the concept of mate value, and it's colloquially, referred to as we've got tens and we've got fours, and
Oh, okay.
people, yeah, right. I mean, the general idea that people have a set of traits that make them either very valuable as a mate, or maybe somewhat valuable, or not valuable at all. This is a core idea that has a lot of threads in evolutionary psychology. Another idea is, revolves around gender differences. So, men and women having different preferences, different motivations, different needs in relationships. This was really big in the early days of evolutionary psychology. And then a third one revolves around this distinction between being a short-term mater and being a
Mm,
long-term mater. The idea that relationships can kind of fit along this short-term, long-term continuum, and some people specialize in one or the other. If you're good at one, you
right.
might have shortcomings in the other dimension. So those are, I think, the three big ones that most people sort of nod along, like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with these, but there's a
Yeah.
whole science back in.
So your teenage self was like, "This can't be true," or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think my teenage self was like, at one level, this feels true.
Mhm,
I have seen some of these ideas in action, and at another level, it doesn't. Now, at that time, I cannot separate which is the part that is resonating and which is the part that feels wrong.
mm,
I mean, I just know that that's kind of exciting to
yeah.
discover something that feels simultaneously true and untrue. Um, it would take me 20 to 30 years to ultimately sort out which were the parts that actually worked and which were the parts that didn't.
I'm laughing because I really relate to that because I think that's how I feel a lot about a lot of dating advice out there. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it could like, if he wanted to, he would. It sounds like it could be true, but is it? You know?
Yeah.
And yeah.
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 No, that's a good one. That's a good one. I mean, the Sex in the City, he's just not that into you mantra. I mean,
Right.
we use that on our show a lot too, because that shows up in a lot of movies. So we have a podcast where we talk about movies, and the you know the idea that, there's a lot of, like, people who are kinda wishy-washy, and that usually signals that they aren't all that into the person, but, yeah, that's not always true in real life.
Right.
Sometimes there are extenuating circumstances.
Totally. Well, I'm really glad that, all of your work and all of your research has led to you writing this book, Bonded by Evolution: The New Science of Love and Connection, which I got up to chapter 10, I think.
Yeah.
It's definitely different than a lot of books I've read. I had to, like, do it slowly.
Yeah. I do think it's a slower
It's a slow
burn
burn.
because it's a lot of data. I mean, it's a
Yes. But one of my biggest takeaways is that there is a really big gap between what we think we want in a partner
yeah.
and who we actually choose to settle down with. So, what are some of the main reasons behind that? Because I find this so fascinating.
Yeah. So this has been one of the main challenges we've been wrestling with for the last couple of decades, and this actually grew out of some of the gender different stuff I was talking about earlier. Because one of the first things we saw once we started studying speed dating in the mid 2000s was that you regularly saw, even among our college student participants, men say they care about attractiveness more than women. Women say they care about earning potential more than men. But then when we would put them in situations where they'd actually be evaluating a set of potential romantic partners, oh, yeah, I want to date this guy, not that guy. Actually, physical attractiveness seemed to be affecting men's and women's judgments just as strongly. And ambition actually also wasn't really showing a gender difference. Both men and women, they kind of liked the ambitious partner. So that was our first clue that something about what people are saying they like isn't matching with what actually reels them in once they're meeting people face to face. So we broadened the aperture here, and we started looking at all sorts of traits, and we started not, we put gender differences to the side, and we just said, well, what if you're a person who says you really want a partner who's especially intelligent? Does that mean that when you go on a bunch of dates with different folks, you tend to select the intelligent partners more than the unintelligent partners as the ones that you'd want to see again. And it turned out that that correlation was basically zero. I mean, it's just
Really?
no signal whatsoever in what people say they were looking for. When we talk about, sort of, people's the difference between what they say they want and what they actually want, that's where this comes from, and this has proven to be a real mystery why people do this.
I mean, I think there are so many factors of, like, that influence what we say we want. Like, everyone listening, I'm sure we've all made our lists.
Yeah,
We've all made our
right.
we've manifested, we've been, sharing our list with people, whatever. But then, yeah, like, who we actually end up with, and I think some people are like, "Oh, yeah, that this person has everything on my list," or whatever, but it can surprise us who we
Yeah.
actually end up with in so many ways, or just there's just it seems like an infinite number of personality traits, and you can't really factor in all of them.
Yes. So there are two strong possibilities that we're working with these days. One is exactly what you said. It's too many traits. And even if you come up with a list, I mean, we have studies that show this. We ask people, like, tell me your three deal breakers. Okay. And then you go on a date with somebody who fits those three deal break, right? They've got exactly the three things you said you care about. And you're thrilled on this date. And then the twist is that you go on a date with somebody who has someone else's three deal breakers, not the ones you came up with, the ones some random person came up with. And guess what? You're just as happy on that date. So I think of this analogy like, it's like you got this vast menu in front of you with thousands of choices. You pick something. Your seatmate picks something. The waiter comes. The waiter mixes up the orders. You don't really notice. It would be like that, and it's a strange thing, but I do think it's linked to the vast array of possible good things that partners could bring to the table. Yeah.
Right.
A second possibility is that all of these traits, boy, do we have a lot of leeway in how we interpret them. So you often see people doing things like this. I really want somebody who's confident. Okay. And then I introduce you to somebody who's confident. If you like them, you say, yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. The self assured kind of confidence. If you don't like them, you say, no, 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 that's conceited. That's not what I meant.
Right.
So
Not
so
that kind.
right, it's like not that kind. So it's, this is another reason it's hard. It's like people get to interpret these traits however they
Yeah.
want to.
So then what should people do with their lists?
Yeah.
What's your advice there? Like, do we just
Uh,
toss them out?
Where lists are, I guess, I don't know if useful is the right word. Where they matter the most is in the way that people shape their pools in the first place.
The dating
And
pool.
yeah, exactly. So there will be people who will say, like, for moral reasons, for social network reasons, I cannot date somebody who is not in my political party. Or maybe they would say, I cannot date somebody who, if you want kids, I can't date somebody who doesn't want kids, or vice versa. I think if people shape their pools to contain those people, then they will not down the road have to face the potentially upsetting trade-off of now what do you do that you have fallen for somebody who actually doesn't share your political beliefs, or they don't want kids and you do, and now you have to figure out what you're going to do with that. So
Right.
shaping the pool can remove really tough down the road choices, but notice I'm already making an assumption here that if you surround yourself with people who have a more diverse set of viewpoints than you do, there is a decent chance you will fall for somebody who doesn't fit what you would draw
Right.
on paper. And so I think like we got to live with that. Now the problem is that if you craft your pool too narrowly, this is why then dating starts to feel awful and like you're running through the same people over and over again. Like seeing a diversity of people, meeting a diversity of people is really good. I mean, not just for dating, but just for feeling like you're a
Right.
human out there in the world. So this is the challenge. But if people are gonna hold on to their lists, that's where, if they pick one thing and use it not as, as a way of sort of crafting your pool in the first place.
I like that. That's definitely different advice I've heard, on this show. So yeah, if you're listening, look at your list. Is there anything you can pull from your list that will help you shape just like where you're looking for
Yeah.
dates? I like that. But I
Yeah.
want to come back to something you mentioned earlier, which is mate value. And this is
Okay.
something that I didn't really, I honestly didn't really think about that much until I was reading your book of like, oh, like we've all heard, oh, they're my league, they're not my league.
Yeah.
But I think you talk about mate value in the way of like what you bring to the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how much
That's
does
right.
this matter? Like, what are some of the myths around mate value?
Yeah. So first, I'll talk about where it does matter, and then I'll talk about where it's gotten overblown.
Okay.
Okay. So I think mate value primarily matters in two broad ways. One is that your sense of how desirable you are absolutely shapes the risks that you're willing to take, how you feel out there when you're meeting and interacting with people, and essentially whether you go home at the end of the evening feeling good about yourself or bad about yourself. I think that matters a lot. Um, I think it also matters in the broad sense that when you look at populations of couples, they'll tend to correlate in the extent to which they're physically attractive. So generally speaking, if we're thinking about a mixed gender couple and there's a woman in front of me standing next to two guys, and my job is to pick which of these two guys is her partner. If I pick the one that's closest to her attractiveness level, I'll be correct about 70% of the time. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, so that's greater than 50-50.
Yeah.
It's not 100, but
Yeah.
but it's greater than 50-50. Okay. So mate value and the reason we think that happens is because of a competitive process that takes place very early as people are getting to know each other. So attractive people, they receive more attention from members of their preferred gender, and then they're able to select other people that they find especially desirable, right? It's almost like they get first choice. That's the logic. Okay. All of that aside, I think what gets missed in this discussion is the fact that we actually don't agree nearly as strongly as you might think about who's desirable and who's not, about who's hot and who's
Mhm.
not. We think like, oh, it's like a fact about this person that they are an eight. But the reality is, if I poll a bunch of people who don't know you and have them rate yeah, there'll be some eights, but there's going to be some nines and there's going to be some tens and there's going to be some sevens and some sixes and some fives. Like there's a spread. There's always a spread. And that spread is not like people weren't paying attention. They really have different opinions. And critically, when people get to know each other over time, when they get to know each other better, that spread increases.
Right.
And that is really, really important because a lot of times in dating, the point isn't to be the most popular person in the room. The point is to find somebody that you like especially well and who likes you more than other people like you. So time together is a thing that helps facilitate that.
And that's promising.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I
You don't
think
have to
that's
be liked by everyone.
right.
That's not the point.
Right, and I think, like, online dating but even, like, brief date I mean, I can blame speed dating for this too. Like, it kinda broke our brains that the way that we think we get partners is you have to charm them in minutes. I mean, half a second if you're
Yeah,
swiping. But
right.
that's not classically how this has worked.
No. Okay, so is there such thing as marriage material? Like, when you talk about mate value a little bit with looks, but what about
Yeah,
traits
right.
and other things you
Okay,
bring to the table?
okay. This one, this one's controversial. In the sense that if you polled 10 relationship scientists, I bet you'd get 10 different answers. Here is the thing I believe about traits. So that was sort of about like a person's traits early on
Mhm.
when they're, forming a relationship, meeting each other, deciding if they want to date. But now let's talk about what traits do if we fast forward, like people are in a relationship, they're dating, and they're trying to decide, like, is this going to be good for the long run? Should I be looking at their traits, the things that are stably true about them? My answer to this is usually, well, you should definitely be looking at your own traits. That matters. Like your positive outlook, your unresolved avoidance issues, like, yes, these things will present barriers to intimacy down the road. And look, look, I'm a big believer in therapy, but I also think romantic partners do a lot to help each other to navigate those kinds of challenges. Probably the most common way that an avoidant person becomes less avoidant is through a long-term, secure, close relationship. But I think the core of your question actually is about, should I be thinking about my partner's traits? Should I be thinking about what they are bringing to the table because it's going to make me happy in the long term? And honestly, my answer is like a little. It's a smaller component than you think. That look, given the choice, would you want a partner who's agreeable and fun and happy and has no avoidance or anxiety issues? That would be great. But if you're in love with somebody who has a couple of those issues, I can confidently say that the way the two of you craft your relationship, like the story you have as a couple, the rituals and sort of the daily routines you have together, all these things are going to matter way more than the quote unquote fact that your partner is an anxious person, for example. And this is actually one of these like little surprising nuggets in the science that I think a person's traits. It's not that they have no effect, but they're smaller than a lot of people would think.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things I learned from your book is just, like, it's more about what you're building and less about
Yeah.
who is involved in the building.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and what those traits on paper actually look like,
Yeah.
which I think, honestly, modern dating is not working in our favor to build the history that or, like, the kind of that the fabric of the relationship early on. Everyone's so focused on, well, if they're like this, it's down the road, it's gonna be a problem, or if they're, "Oh, they said they're really avoiding with their ex, so maybe in our relationship, it's gonna suck." Like,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
and everyone's kind of weighing the traits and kind of projecting them into the future versus, like, well, what if we can build something actually that was completely different than our past relationships that we actually love?
Yeah, I find it a much more helpful way to look at it, that relationships are these constructions. I find that the ex's point interesting. And, if I had my way, the couples that were just getting together would talk openly about their experiences with their exes, what was bad, but also what was good.
Yeah.
Because whenever you're crafting a new relationship, it's this funny dance where, well, you don't want to throw out everything
No.
that you did in the past, because I bet some of that worked. So you should, like, take that lesson and
Yeah.
bring it forward into the future, but some of it didn't work. And what that means too, especially early on, and especially if that old relationship isn't too far in the past, is it, like, almost feels like the timelines are crossing at various points, and it can be kind of unnerving. I think it can put people in a situation where they try to avoid the past a little too much, as they're crafting something. But thinking about what your partner was like in a past relationship, will they repeat that pattern? The simple fact that you're already acknowledging that and pointing to that means that this thing is not inevitable. Like, just because something is true of the way you've behaved in the past, like, these things are controllable, and it depends on how you set up the relationship in the first place.
Love that point. I have so many questions. Let's get into more after this break. Okay, stop what you're doing and listen up because Balesa and I are giving away free spicy toys or gift cards to every single one of you. That's right. Everyone who signs up wins something. We're all winners thanks to Balesa. And if you haven't heard of Balesa, let me put you on. They're a by women for everyone company that's completely flipping the script on sexual wellness. Bellesa toys are made from medical grade body safe silicone and can come in sleek, travel friendly charging cases, which are way better than keeping them loose in the drawer for someone to find. Oops, guilty as charged. You've definitely seen Bellesa's viral toys all over your For You page, like the rose. It blew up for a reason. This little flower shaped suction toy is iconic. Or their famous Whisper collection, the first ever fully silent vibrators, which is amazing if you share your space and appreciate a little extra privacy and peace of mind. Shipping is next level discreet with an unmatched warranty program, 1 year no hassle replacements, plus a 10-year quality guarantee. If your dog destroys your toy, Bellesa will send you a new one in exchange for a photo of your dog. We love that. Of course, I had to hook all of you up, so my friends at Bellesa and I are sending out free toys or gift cards to everyone who signs up. You heard that right. Every single one of you wins something. Just click the link in the episode description or head to bbvibes.com/datingintentionally. That's bbvibes.com/datingintentionally. What I've learned so far is just talking to you for the last 20
Yeah.
minutes is just that traits and kind of the list, looking at the surface level, first impressions, all these things like don't actually matter that much as nearly as much as building, constructing. So in early dating, let's just say our daters are going on a first or second date this week. What should they be focusing on? Like if it's not getting to know someone's traits and personality, what should they shift to?
Well, on dates, look, I think it's natural and almost inevitable to
Right.
be sizing up the person and sizing up, like, how do I feel about this person? Like, am I attracted to them? Do I think they're funny? Do I want to hear what they have to say about these things? And it's not like it's not easy to will yourself to like somebody if you aren't feeling those things. So totally get that. But one additional thing worth considering is how does this person make you feel about yourself when you're with them? Like, do they also make you feel like you're funny and interesting or hot and sexy? There's an important relational component there as well, that when we're with somebody that, you know, we're excited about them, we're with somebody that we fit with, they actually will tend to make us feel better about ourselves. So I think there are a lot of cases where people are a little bit on the fence and they sort of don't know what they're looking for and they're trying to forecast how is this going to go. But this is just one additional piece of information that has some signal in there. It has some usefulness, and I think it's easy to forget about. But I want to point out too, initial impressions, they aren't all that stable. It's very common that a first impression will change for the better or for the worse when you go on date number 2, and then when you go on date number 3, it can change again. I think that the temptation is as soon as somebody falls below some threshold, then it's like, "Oh, we're out on
Okay.
them." But sometimes if we'd given them an additional chance, our opinion of them may have risen again. So I think this is the challenge, is that this is why I really like modes of quote unquote dating that are really just hanging out in groups, where it's not necessarily a romantically evaluative setting and people don't get to bounce if you don't like somebody because, you signed up for this class and the class goes for 10 weeks
Right, right.
and you're going to be interacting again whether you want to or not. I really like those kinds of settings because it it takes away the constant, like, how do I feel? How do I feel? How do I feel? And you're just hanging out with people, getting to know them.
Yeah, I think it's tough right now to find those
Yeah.
spaces where you will have repeated light interactions with someone
Right.
outside of a college,
Right.
environment,
Right.
where that's, like,
Right.
pretty much the easiest built-in way
I
where you
know.
have that.
I know, and I worry that they're not doing it in the
Oh,
same
no,
way
really?
that we used to. I think, I mean, if you look at young people today, and these are the surveys that worry me the most. Um you look at surveys like, oh, decline in marriage, decline in cohabitation, decline in forming a relationship. The the data, they're not exactly what I would want to see, but there's clearly something going on. But here's the one that I think is unambiguous, which is young people that they don't hang out casually in the way that was common when I was a kid. I mean, I was a kid in the '90s. We didn't even really have cell phones yet. And
Mhm.
so you kinda had to throw yourself into a social setting. You might not even know, like, who was gonna be there exactly, but you spent time with folks and you kinda see where the night took you. And the survey data clearly shows that people are doing that. Young people do that maybe half as much as they did in prior decades. And that concerns me because I think that's where a lot of relationships happen, but it's also where people make mistakes. Like that's the context often where people get rejected or they watch these two get together. Oh, but man, I had a thing for her, and now
Right.
these two are getting together. Like, but that kind of real life heartbreak, you learn something about yourself, you try different things. I think that's really important. And it's nice to have a setting that you can do that, like, with friends around, who, maybe pat you on the back and be like, "Better luck next time, buddy." And, like, I think that's a good thing, and,
Yeah.
I worry that folks are missing out on that.
I know. I talk a lot about on my show just ways to explore that with kinda just using what you have, like signing up for
Yeah.
classes, going to places, but, I mean, I know one thing I found interesting in your book was, like, your recommended approach to dating, was pretty much exactly what I did,
Oh, cool. Oh,
and I
good.
think when I think about it through the lens of, like, kind of creating the social, like, group settings, I kinda feel like I threw myself into first dates that way of, like, I don't know if this is we'll just see. I don't really know if this is gonna work out.
Yeah.
I went on over 60 first dates in under a year, and, like, I just was like, "You know what? Let's just
Yeah.
see." My goal was just to get to the date to just see how we interacted in person using the apps as a launching pad,
Got
dating 3
it.
people at a time,
Nice.
and deciding within the first 3 dates.
Okay,
Again,
okay,
did when
okay.
you said that in
There
your
you
book, I was
go.
like, "Oh, I did that."
Yeah. Okay, but, wait, now I have questions, hold on.
Yeah.
So how many times, I mean, forgive me if you've talked about this
Yeah,
on
it's
the show
okay.
before.
It's
So
okay.
how many times did you kinda have to force yourself to get excited about date number 2 and date number 3 with somebody? But then
I
on
didn't.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay,
didn't. If I didn't have fun on date 1, I didn't go on date 2, but that was the bar. It wasn't attraction, it wasn't spark, it wasn't,
oh, okay, so just having
potential,
fun.
it was just, did I have a good time talking to them?
Nice.
And
Okay,
that was
okay.
enough to get me to date 2. Yeah.
Nice, okay. And then how many times did, like, the attraction happen on, like, date 3, but it wasn't there on 1 or 2?
Oh, with my husband and with several
Yes.
people, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
there you go.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it really does, it is insane how it works like that, and I think sometimes I get pushback on the advice, especially for women dating men, to give it 3 days. They're like, "Well, you never tell a guy to do that," and I'm like, I don't know, I think it's different for men and women a little bit. I think there's some safety factors. I think there's more trust that has to be built. I also think there's a spectrum of sexuality. Some people know right away, some people don't. Like,
Yeah. But I'd tell guys that. Well, why aren't we
uh,
telling guys that? I don't think they
I mean,
know. I don't
I
think they
think
know either.
I think I've had more women than men come to me being like, "I've been on 2 dates and I don't know if I'm attracted."
Got it.
Or and I have a ton of content on the difference between feeling attraction and thinking someone is good looking. There's a
Yeah, yeah,
very big
yeah.
difference, and I'm
Yeah.
always trying to tell people it's like, you might not feel sexual desire for someone on the second date, but you can think they're good looking. Like, it's yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I I know there is, like, in our, cultural stew, this idea that men kinda know right away if they think somebody's attractive or not. I I, um, I don't know what that data is. That's not what I
Yeah.
see. I
What do
I
you
don't
see?
I don't see big ge like, so sort of consistent with what you're talking about here. We've got these data where we take these relationships. So these are all pairs that have happened, okay? And then we rewind time to the beginning and we look at how you felt about this person early on. And it's what you more or less just articulated for yourself. That is the average impression is kind of middling, But if this is going to go on to be something, people's feelings gradually rise from there. Okay. Now it's not linear. Okay. So if you look at an individual person, it might bounce up and down as it gets to this higher peak. And that's when you're sustaining a relationship with somebody. But men and women barely show any differences in that trajectory. Men start a touch higher, right? So that just means on average,
Mm,
they're coming in a little hot.
right.
But women tend, again, in the relationships that are going to go somewhere, women catch up pretty quickly. So the instability that we see is not meaningfully different for men and women. That is, a guy, it might have the experience of I was really attracted to her on day number 1, and by day number 2, I was kind of off. But it's also going to go the other way too. That he meets her and thinks okay, and then second day
Yeah,
okay, and third day he's like like
right.
we're not we're also complex creatures.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm not over here being like,
yeah,
no, no, I get that. I
yeah,
appreciate you saying that. And that is so interesting that the data shows it's like roughly the same.
yeah,
And yeah, so for guys listening, give it a few dates too. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's a very good idea.
Another concept from your book that I love was you just breaking down all the myths around compatibility. Like you have to find like people really believe or they're dating optimizing for similarities or
Yeah.
they're buying into opposites attract. So can you break down like why this is so the wrong way to think about it?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's funny, the perception that you are similar to somebody, it matters a lot. I mean, and in fact, it matters so much that we think the causality even goes the other way. That is, I like you, and therefore I think we are similar on all of these different dimensions. And people do this, and we call this motivated reasoning. Um, Meaning that if I really have a thing for somebody, I'm gonna find and pick out the things that we do share and put a lot of weight on those things and talk about those things a lot. They're
Right.
gonna become a central part of our relationship. Because people do this, it is remarkably difficult to do the thing that any reasonable matchmaker would want to do, which is take a set of attributes about you, take a set of attributes, the same attributes about a set of potential dates you might have, and then try to match you up beforehand, before you even meet in the first place, in the hopes that you'll really gravitate toward the ones who share a lot of similarities with you. Um, and, maybe you wouldn't have been all that into the ones where you share a lot of dissimilarities. When we try to do that, when we try to set people up ahead of time based on whatever they self-report, it just doesn't do anything. It just doesn't predict one way or the other, whether people end up liking each other. And I think that motivated reasoning component is a big part of why there's too much flexibility in my ability, me as a perceiver picking out the things and saying like, "Oh, well, these are the things that really matter." But that's just because those are the things you and I happen to share.
Oh, I see. It's like retroactively.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a lot of retroactive stuff. And
So,
this is
okay,
yeah.
hold on. But knowing this, then it's like everyone's on the dating app swiping, looking for commonality, similarity.
Yeah.
But like, it's like, okay, on one hand, you're saying that doesn't necessarily determine if you're really going to be compatible. But on the other hand, it's like we need that to start a conversation sometimes.
So I think this is the best case is that
Okay.
okay, but initial conversation is hard. It sure is nice to have things to talk about. And I totally resonate with that idea. Um, I think this is why some of the best methods we have for getting two people to like each other are more in the domain of conversational tactics, for lack of a better term. That is, giving people things to talk about that are better than small talk. And and though shared interests can be good, what tends to work especially well are things that permit a little bit of extra self-disclosure, a little bit of vulnerability even. If anybody's ever heard of the 36 questions test, this is honestly, it's like the best thing that scientists have concocted in the romantic realm. It's not like match people on similarities. It's not even like make you hotter somehow. It's give you this set of questions with things like if there was a crystal ball and it could tell you anything, what would you ask it? Or what do you most regret not having told somebody? Again, I
Right.
wouldn't pull that out 5 minutes into a date, but 90 minutes,
I
I
mean, we did it, I would say we started doing it, like, a month into dating, and
yeah,
it took us a while, we did, like, a few questions at a time, took us, like,
yeah,
2 months maybe to go through the whole thing.
yeah, 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 and so how did it feel?
Totally works.
Yeah, yeah,
It was
yeah.
awesome.
It's
Yeah.
amazing, it's
We didn't
amazing.
love every question.
Yeah,
My husband
yeah,
especially is not the most, like, forthcoming, but,
yeah,
he
right, right, and so sometimes it's nice to have the to have the excuse to lean on. I mean, I don't think people can, like, really, like, print out these
Yeah.
cards and bring and bring them on dates, but just having your eye for vulnerability because it really signals something um, about trust and openness and makes the person that you're disclosing to feel a little special. And that's just the nature of what it means to disclose something a little vulnerable. The whole point is that you're probably not willing to do this with everybody, and it can help generate liking. Again, it's not gonna work every time. Nothing is foolproof, but it's like the most reliable thing that we've come up with.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. I really wanna touch quickly a little bit more on the compatibility stuff, like, just we talked about a little bit similarities, and I know in your book you break into why opposites attract is
Yeah,
not the best approach. So,
right.
what does you said compatibility is elusive. You said
Yeah.
this in your book a few
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
times,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
based on what you know, what are some signs early on that we might be compatible with someone, like, truly, truly compatible?
Well, yeah, one element that I think is promising, and this is where a lot of the research is pointing right now, is really in this space of the development of an us rather than a, you know, me and you as these separate entities. And certainly it's better than the like I'm evaluating you, trying to figure out what value you bring to the table. But as soon as there's a development of something that feels closer to a culture that the two of you are constructing together, and sometimes it's like, little in jokes and things. But sometimes it's these broader stories and the way you see each other. I mean, my current partner is fond of remarking that it really mattered to her early on that I thought she was very funny. She cracked me up. And what was funny about that for her was that actually nobody had really treated her that way before. I think she always secretly thought she was kind of funny, but she'd never really been seen that way. And so that realization, and then us, I mean, talking about that, then becomes part of this shared narrative of who we are. And that's like one component among 100 of what will go into this growing relationship. I think things like that are very promising. It's like it's a sign that you're building something and that maybe you have the sense of security in the relationship to also be open and talk about these things and be aware of them as they're happening. So that's one thing that I would point to. For the average dater, I actually don't know. I mean, we don't have the data, but also I'm not talking to enough daters these days to know when these things are happening. Are they happening on day 1? Are they
Well,
happening
I have some
5?
insight.
Yeah, yeah,
I
okay, well, yeah, I wanna hear this.
so based on, like, just hearing you talk about this, it just makes me think of how many early connections are cut short, and they're not able to build this shared,
Yeah,
uh, narrative, history, fabric that's, like, the identity of a couple because basically they're using all of the obstacles or potential obstacles as reasons to not continue
right.
versus to actually persevere, and then that becomes part of their story. That's what I think is happening. That's
Yeah.
why I think the compatibility piece is really missing because people are overthinking every little negative thing they learn about someone or potentially negative before actually even trying. It's easier to opt out and just be single, right? Just
Yeah.
not even try to muck up your routine and let someone into
Yeah.
your life and have that challenge together.
Yeah. So that completely makes sense. And let me also resonate with I think the reality that it's hard to build something with somebody if there's a very real possibility that they're not going to want to see you next time. So are
Mhm.
you really going to like lean into that in joke or lean into
Right.
that like somewhat sensitive story about, being broken up with by your last partner when I mean, what are the odds that they're not going to want to see you on
Mhm.
the next date?
It's a
That's
risk.
tough. Yeah, that's a
Right.
real risk. I mean, again, thinking back to prior relationships, moments where I'm into this person and now they are disclosing something very deep and meaningful to me, and then I'm inspired to disclose something really deep and meaningful back to them. That is made far easier with the knowledge that whether we say something dumb right now or not, I'm gonna see them tomorrow.
Right.
It's
It's
good that's gonna happen. It
okay,
makes it e
listeners, what I want you to take away from this is it feels scary, but think about and you're as you're dating someone, how can you build this foundation of, like, your identity as a couple with all the unique things that are happening in this early stage, like, wherever you are in life, whatever you're dealing with, it's not I think people think like, "Oh, I lost my job," or, "Oh, like, I'm dealing with something hard, like, I can't date." It's like, no, that actually could become part of your story.
Yeah, absolutely, I love that.
Okay. I have a quick little game. Paul, you ready? This is
Ready.
dating advice on trial. Okay. You have three options for answers:
Oh, ooh,
supported by research, partially true, and not supported by research. Okay. So I'm
love
going
it.
to give you
Okay,
five
wait, and do
pieces.
I have to explain?
We'll dig into one because we don't have
Okay,
time to get into them all.
okay,
But basically, I'm going to give you five kind of dating advice or like just ideas out there, and they're either supported by research, partially true, or not supported by research.
okay,
Ready? Okay.
ready.
Number 1, attraction can grow.
Supported by research.
Okay, great. 2, people know within minutes if someone is a good match.
Not supported by research.
Number 3, men love the chase.
Men love the chase. Men love the
Men
chase.
wanna chase a woman in dating.
Not supported. No, 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 not supported by
Have
research.
you not heard
No.
this one? Okay.
No, no, yeah. No, I'm gonna go with no.
Okay, 4, you should have a clear list of what you're looking for.
Not supported, but I'll say partially. I'll say
Okay,
partially.
partially.
I'll say partially.
Alright, and the 5th one, you'll know when you know.
Ooh. Um, supported by research. I
Okay,
like
wait,
that
tell me
one.
about that
Yeah,
one.
that's the
How is
one that
that
I
suppo
yeah, I think that's the one I like the most. I mean, if what we mean if what we mean by that statement is that there is no, like, clear timeline by which a person is like, "Oh, by date 10, you're gonna know how you feel." I mean, I really
Mhm.
think, like, uncertainty and instability is absolutely the name of the game with incredible variability about when people know how they feel. And it's also a sad reality too that sometimes you can feel very positively about somebody for a while and then those feelings start to change. So so if what we mean by that is that you can't hurry things and
Mm,
people everybody's on their own timeline and that it's worth having some grace for that I'm wholly into that idea.
love it. That's so I love ending on that positive
Okay, good.
note because I think people feel really rushed or like
Yeah.
there's something wrong with them if they don't know or and it's like sometimes you just really need to give it time.
If you look at the typical couples in the data sets we work with, now sometimes this is college students, sometimes it's, later adolescents, folks in, high school, but also folks in their 20s and 30s, and you ask them, "How long did I know this person before we got together?" The average is like 11 months. I mean, people we have over-indexed on we met and bang, the fireworks happened right
Yeah, no.
away. That is not typical. The slow burn is far more typical, even in the online dating age. Right? That a lot of times what online dating means is I met this person, but it still took a month of seeing each other for like the other folks to fall out of view and for this person to come into focus. Time, time, time. And if you're single and not loving it, that's a crappy message to hear because you think like, "Oh, but I want somebody now. I'm tired of waiting." But that's the reality.
Well, I mean, that's why I have this podcast. I wanna make
Yeah.
that part more fun.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's
because
good.
you try to have fun along the way, but yes, it is very difficult. Alright, after this break, we're gonna get into our dating dilemma. Okay, Paul, are you ready for this listener
Yes.
question? This has
Okay, I'm
nothing
ready.
to do with what we were talking about. It's
Okay.
just a random just listener question. Okay.
Okay. It's good.
I I, 34, non-binary, recently fell pretty hard for an old friend, 39 male, who asked me out. We had incredible chemistry and both of us were surprised and overwhelmed. He did say he was not interested in a serious relationship, but was willing to hang out and get to know each other a couple times a week, which worked for me until it didn't because
Hmm.
he did not disclose important information about his sexual activity with his other partner in a timely manner. Also, a communication I thought we had addressed was still showing up. I eventually told him that it didn't feel worth it, but I totally botched how I delivered my reasoning. He displayed great emotional maturity and desire to get better at working with me and keep seeing me through it all. I feel like he broke my trust, and he's also the only person that feels like a viable date to me right now. Should I make an effort to explain my feedback better, or should I just let it hang, poorly communicated, and hope that I find someone who doesn't break my trust next time? It could be forever at this rate. So this is a lot.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
lot here. What's your initial
I mean, I'm
thoughts?
mostly impressed by everybody's behavior in here other than the broken trust, but it seems like, you know, like people are not rushing each other on either
Mm,
side and they're taking their time but also being open with their feelings. So this is why I gravitate toward the if there is some air to be cleared here and I'm not it's not totally obvious to me what it is,
yeah,
but regardless, I'm happy to say, like, no, I think being clear is always a good idea. Um, if trust has been broken, um, yeah, that can be very challenging to recover from. But even in cases like this, it sounds like the author here had an expectation of monogamy, but the older gentleman did not share that expectation. But that is a thing that can, in principle, be negotiated. I don't view that as some sort of deep character flaw necessarily. So
right.
I say keep at it. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I think I agree, like, people approach dating differently. Some people think you don't have to disclose certain things, other people do.
Yeah.
In the best light, call it a miscommunication, and then you adjust from there, and, like,
Yeah.
it, like, at least causes them to talk about how they feel about these things, and then they can decide how they move forward, but I'm not sure if I think what I got from the first part of this is that there was a different issue not related to the sexual stuff
Yeah.
that, like, was a communication pattern that, like, was continued and they didn't like it. What worries me about this submission is he's the only person that feels like a viable date to me at
I
this
agree
time.
with that. Yeah. That also strikes me as,
My
like,
heart goes out to this person
yeah.
because it's like, that's not true.
Right. And that if there's a sense in which this person feels a little desperate, I mean, I mentioned at the top, working on yourself, your own viewpoint, your own attributes at a given moment in time, that matters a lot more for your ultimate
Mhm.
well-being and happiness than the traits that this person has. So I think you're right to pick up on that. I think I would also look in that direction.
Yeah, yeah, I think there's a couple of things to work on here if you're listening, and one is what Paul just said of, like, doing the internal work of what is my view on my dating pool and my options
Yeah.
and maybe even my would you call it, like, mate value,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, and then the other piece is should they make an effort to explain their feedback? I mean, personally, I'm always like go for it, but proceed with caution. It might not work out still, but I don't think there's any issue with going back and being like, hey, can we talk? I don't like how I handled this and I would love a do-over.
That sounds great. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah. That's I think totally okay. And look, maybe you become friends after this. Like I guess you were friends before this, right?
Yeah, I got that sense.
So at least repair the friendship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is good.
I get
This is
I
good.
get the best questions. Like, thank you to everyone who submitted.
Yeah.
You guys really just share it all, and I appreciate it. It's a lot. It's a lot to work with.
Right.
So, Paul, do you have any positive, just final thoughts of just words of wisdom for listeners out there who are dating? What can they be doing?
I do think keeping the time horizons in mind is useful. I find that when, just that dating can take a while and that oftentimes very fulfilling relationships take place with people that we've known for a little while already. When you make dating just part of the natural process of socializing as opposed to this extra task that you have to do, I think that makes the whole thing feel a lot more fun. That, hey, I'm going to go hang out with these folks tonight, and maybe so and so guy or so and so woman is going to be there that I'm into, or maybe not, but I'm going to have fun regardless. If that's your mentality, you kind of can't lose because then you're having a
Yeah.
good time no matter what.
Love that. Well, Paul, where can we get more of you?
You can buy my book, Bonded by Evolution, where I talk about the science behind these topics. And then, if you want to hear me talk about rom-coms and romantic films, check out the podcast Love Factually that I host with Eli Finkel, where we talk about one movie at a time. Just find a movie that you like or hate and listen to what we have to say about it from the perspective of the science.
I love your show. It's so fun.
Oh, cool.
And I love this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on.
You bet. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, what did you think? What are your takeaways? Drop a comment on Spotify or shoot me a DM on Instagram at dating.intentionally. For me, the stat that hit with me the hardest was Paul's research showing that the average couple knew each other for 11 months before actually getting together. I think that's so much longer than what we expect to happen, especially from dating apps. And for me, it proves that the slow burn is truly the way to go. And it did make me think about my own story with my husband. Like, attraction wasn't immediate from date one. And if I had been so rigid about wanting to feel swept off my feet right away or just like wanting to be super into it from the jump, I probably would have written him off completely. Sometimes a meh first date is just the first date and we need to allow things to grow. That's what I learned anyway. And I want to thank you so much for listening. Thank you for trusting me. Don't forget, you're doing great. If you know someone who is stuck making the same checklist over and over, send them this episode. And if this episode has helped you, a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify goes a long way. Once again, I'm Talia. This is Dating Intentionally, and I'll catch you next time.